All right, everybody. Welcome to Mondays with Mike. I'm Mike, Chief Meteorologist Mike Iskevitz here at Fox 26. And so I want to say thank you very much for joining me here. This airs regularly at 12:30 on Mondays, but of course you can watch it anytime on Fox Local. I am back. I was off for a week, and it really, I can't remember the last time I had an entire week off. I'm not complaining, but it to be gone for an entire week, weekend, 5 days, and then weekend, very unusual. So where was I? Why did I take a week off? Well, went to Florida for 4 days. My brother had to have a surgery on his eye, and I was just concerned. I wanted to make sure we had enough help just in case he needed it. Turns out I mean, passed with flying colors. Everything went beautifully. And other than now needing some new glasses, that's about it. Everything is looking really good for him. So I'm glad. Went to a great hospital, which was the Bascom Palmer Institute at the University of Miami. So they did a great job, and supposed to be one of the best places in the world to get eye surgery. So anyway, that all turned out well. The weather was amazing in Florida. I know we've had sort of some ups and downs here locally, but over there, when I got there, it was actually cool. And you don't usually think about it being cool in South Florida in April. Just doesn't really happen very often, but it was legitimately cool. Like you walk outside in the morning, it was breezy, and it was like in the 60s, which, for them is pretty cool. So that was terrific. Um, Man, we had a great view. The day before, my brother had to have the eye procedure. We went to a place called Lantana Beach. See, in Palm Beach County, you have like places you may have heard of, like Boca Raton, and then you have like there's Boynton Beach and um, uh, Lantana Beach, and then you go farther up, and you have like Lake Worth. You have Stewart Beach. If you go farther up, you run into like where NASA is. Anyway, this place was beautiful, and we were overlooking the ocean at a place called the Dune Deck. And oddly enough, so there's a couple of odd things about this place. They only take cash. I don't. Could you imagine a restaurant? I mean, packed, hundreds and hundreds of people. They only take cash. That sounds dangerous to me, but they must have their reasons. But anyway, if you find yourself in Palm Beach County, Florida, I would recommend the Dune Deck. The food was really good, but it was the view. I mean, I'm not disparaging Galveston. Look, I love Galveston, but this was just beautiful. I mean, just the water was blue as far as the eye could see. And while we were eating lunch, there was an iguana there. And I jumped up, tried to get a picture of the iguana because I was traveling by myself, by the way, too, which I never ever do. Um, but tried to get a picture of the iguana, and he jumped into the bushes before I can get him. But I mean, he was maybe 2 or 3 feet long. He's a big boy. So it was a nice trip. Got to see my good friend, got to spend a lot of time with my mom and my brother. Got to visit the owls. They have these a protected species in Florida, which are the burrowing owls. They're about yay big, maybe that, but they're tiny, but they're really cute, and they live underground. And so the mama owl will stand watch. There's always one owl. I mean, I assume it's the mother. It might be the father. I don't know. I didn't ask. But she stands watch at the top of the burrow, and there's a protective sort of a rope, around where the burrow is, with a sign that says, it's illegal to mess with the owls because they're protected species. And so always love going and just you don't want to go too close because they get a little bit upset. But anyway, it's really cool stuff for people like me who love animals. And lots of lizards. They have these Caribbean lizards there. I think they're called Cuban curl lizards or something like that. But they are bigger than what you would find here are, your average lizard that we have here, which I think are called Anole lizards. And they have those down there too, but they're big. curly tail. They're really cute. They're all over the place. I mean, all over the place. So that was my trip to Florida. It was great. And then, coming back, it was great too to have a couple of days off at home. The air conditioner broke. So, had to get that fixed. So that was a chunk, which I'm sure you guys can relate to. But not, I can't advertise anybody, but I'll tell you, we did have a good experience with 1 hour air conditioning. You could ask for Joshua, great guy. Eventually, we're gonna have to spend a lot of money though, but we did what we had to do, right? I want to also tell you, I watched a great movie on the way down there. I downloaded it. Well, I downloaded two things from my Netflix account to watch on the journey. The first one was a new comedy special from Demetri Martin. If you haven't watched Demetri Martin, maybe you get it, maybe you don't. It might be your style of humor or not. It's sort of nerdy humor. He's brilliant. He's extremely creative, and you kind of have to pay attention. But he's so just hilarious. Really, really, really funny. So I watched that. Then I started watching this movie called Baby Driver. It's not about babies. It is a lot about driving, but it's called Baby Driver. It's not that old. It came out in 2017. I've heard of it. I think I remember our movie guys, John and Dave, talking about it back then. I'm going to have to ask him about that. So good. The whole Okay, so there's a lot of driving in the movie, and there's a lot of shooting in the movie, and it is definitely R rated. So I wouldn't, it's not for kids. I wouldn't call it like a hard R. It's not like there's no, well, I get there's violence. There's violence, there's shooting, there's a lot of curse words, so I wouldn't really want to watch it necessarily with, well, maybe I'd watch it with my 17-year-olds. They might like it. But anyway, the soundtrack is amazing. It's all this classic music, like from the 60s and 70s, kind of like soul music and some rock music. But it's just, the movie was so well done, and there's such good acting in it. There's John Hamm is in it, and Jamie Foxx is in it, and Kevin Spacey, who doesn't seem like he's a very good person, but he's a really good actor. He was in it, and the lead actor was somebody I'd never heard of before. His name is Ansel Elgort. I've never heard of him before, but he was really good in this movie. Apparently, he's been in a few other things. So, if you want to check out Baby Driver, I would highly recommend it. It's probably more of a guy movie, but there's a love story in there too. It's just really good. So if you like music and you like action movies, I don't think it really gets much better than this. It really is an outstanding movie. So I highly recommend that. Um, Today is Earth Day. And so along those lines, I wanted to let you know that while I was sorry, I'm getting a text from my wife. um, while I was in Florida, speaking of Earth Day, so while I was down there, I got to visit with my best old friend. So not that he's old. I mean, we're the same age, but we went to high school together. We were college roommates. And anyway, Ryan. Ryan has been at the forefront of technology for as long as I could remember. Whatever's the new gadget, he has. Probably 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago, he was the first person I saw with a Bluetooth headset that was connected to his phone, where you could answer the calls and talk without picking up your phone. He's like, oh, it's Bluetooth. I'm like, what is Bluetooth? Now everything's Bluetooth. So anyway, he's one of those, he's just at the forefront of everything. Anyway, speaking of Earth Day, Ryan has a Tesla. Now, I want you to know that I drive a pretty basic old car. It's not a jalopy. It's getting there. So I'm used to driving a car that is 11 years old. Let's see. Yeah, 11 years old. And, it's point A to point B, but I like it though. And I don't mind if it gets scratched or goes over a pothole. But anyway, he has a Tesla, and it's not just any Tesla. This is the Tesla Model Y Performance. not just the regular Model Y and not just the dual motor long range Model Y. This is the performance Model Y. And it is ridiculous. This car is scary. Now, I'm not exaggerating. It goes 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. Okay. So it can keep up with any Corvette you could throw at it, any Porsche 911. I mean, this thing is so fast. And I'm not going to tell you that we took it up to, uh, you know, we didn't break any laws. Okay. We found a safe place to do it just so that he could punch it and I could experience the acceleration of this thing. If you've never been in an electric car with this kind of power, it's shocking. When you floor it, it's not, there's no engine noise. It's not like you see a drag racer. It is whisper quiet. It's like a golf cart, but it's like a golf cart on steroids, just with a rocket engine behind it. It is so bleeping fast. And so I was scared to drive it actually. But he sort of twisted my arm and said, here, try it out. So I said, okay, fine. The thing is so technologically advanced. It doesn't even have a, like when you're looking ahead, there's no speedometer, there's no like tachometer stuff that you're used to seeing, fuel display and all that. Everything's off to the side and a big, like basically like a giant iPad, which is the interface for everything. And so you could set it to different modes. Like you could put it in chill mode, which is where you're not going to be, you want to save a little bit of battery power and all that stuff. But you could put it in sport mode, which is where it really ramps up. And I didn't even hold my foot on the pedal for that long, but I just punched it for like a couple of seconds and it was like you're on a roller coaster. It is fast. So, and would I ever buy one? I don't think so. But I do want to tell you though that he's telling me about this Tesla, right? Now Tesla makes very expensive cars, and they actually do make some affordable cars now, more affordable. I'm not an IRS agent. I'm not a financial advisor, but I'll tell you that if you are thinking about getting an electric vehicle, these Model Ys now, you can't get the Model 3 anymore, but the Model Y will get you a $7,500 tax credit. Tax credit is subtracted from the purchase price. Didn't used to be that way last year. It used to be that you had to wait for your taxes. This is deducted from the sales price. So it's really not as expensive as you might think. See, I'm talking myself into it here. It's really not as expensive as you might think. And it's a really neat car. It really, really is. And you don't have to get the one that goes a zillion miles an hour. They have, ones that are a little bit more tame. I would hesitate to get it in Texas because that we have this constant anxiety with the grid. They haven't really had those problems in some other states. In Texas, gosh, I mean, how are you going to charge your electric car if the grid goes down? That's the problem, right? So maybe it would be good, EVs might be good in a household where you have one regular car or truck or SUV or whatever, and then you have your EV for your daily commute. And then if there's ever an emergency, at least you have another car kind of thing. So, and you can crunch the numbers on it. There are some calculators online. Again, I'm talking about this because it's Earth Day and because I drove this ridiculous, crazy car. You can do some research online with different calculators, like, how much does your gas cost? What kind of mileage are you getting in your current car or an alternative car that you might be looking into buying? And then what you're going to get with this. There are cars that get really, really good gas mileage, like these hybrids that maybe, you don't have to get an EV. I feel like all the people who are going to get an electric vehicle have gotten one, right? I mean, you've probably heard that, right? Which is why the sales are slowing down and the prices are just going down, down, down. And so if you want to get one of these, they are much more affordable now than they used to be. Enough of that. So let's see. I told you about the great movie I watched. Told you about the funny comedian that I watched. Told you about the iguana. Told you my brother's doing great. Let's talk about Earth Day. So Earth Day's been around for a little more than 50 years. And the purpose of Earth Day is to, remind everybody to respect our natural resources, to preserve our planet, to, stop species from being um, going extinct because of human activity and things like that. Now, whenever we get into a topic like this, it gets political. I like to not see any of this stuff as political. I'm a skeptic. Believe me, if you're a skeptic, trust me, I'm a skeptic. And I don't mean a climate change skeptic necessarily. I just mean a skeptic in general. Um, I don't like always trusting what somebody tells me or especially the government and all that. I'm not a conspiracy theory guy, but um, it's one of those like show me the money kind of show me the proof, kind of thing. So I do want to share with you here some information. Now, this information is from a um, website that I think is probably a good thing to look at during Earth Day. So I'm going to share my screen here with you. And this is from an organization called drawdown.org. Drawdown is a science advocacy group. Politically, they are supposed to be nonpartisan. Um, I looked them up online. I looked up their ratings on media bias. They're not supposed to be biased. Everything they say is factual. The data that I'm going to show you here is based on the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, that IPCC. And whether or not you want to take my word for it or their word for it, that's not really my point here. What I want to do is show you some basic information, a lot of which I didn't know until I was preparing to talk to you guys today. Because it's interesting. It's interesting to see, like, okay, where are we spending our energy? Where are we releasing our carbon, our greenhouse gases, and maybe what can we do to turn things around, or at least to make the Earth, a little bit safer. So let's take a look. So this pie chart shows us the sources of greenhouse gases. And remember, greenhouse gases are gases that trap heat inside the Earth's atmosphere. So you have sunshine coming in, which is our what's called incoming solar radiation or incoming shortwave radiation. And that heats the surface of the Earth. And then to balance that, the Earth will radiate out what's called infrared radiation, or what's called outgoing long wave radiation. So you have the incoming shortwave and the outgoing long wave. So it comes in as visible light mostly, and it leaves as infrared light. Now, there are some constituents in the atmosphere that will absorb that infrared light, basically, and warm up because of the infrared light. Whereas if it weren't there, it would just escape out into space. Well, when you have water vapor, carbon dioxide, cloud cover, and then other things like methane gas is another big one. And also remember the CFCs that we used to have, like Freon? Those are still somewhat in the atmosphere, and those are greenhouse gases too, although we've gone a long way as to getting rid of them, because remember they were putting a hole in the ozone layer. So this shows us here sources of greenhouse gases. And you'll see that about a quarter of all the greenhouse gases created in the world go toward producing electricity. So that means that we're burning coal, we're burning natural gas, mostly coal and gas, to produce electricity. And of course, there are other means of getting electricity. We have nuclear, which I'm a fan of. I wish we could use more. I don't know why. There's nuclear, there's solar power, there's wind power. And we actually have, for as much as Texas is known as an oil state and as, oil and gas exploration and all that kind of stuff, we're actually one of the leaders across the country in wind power and solar power. On some days, if it's a hot, windy day across Texas, especially out in West Texas, we get the majority of our energy in the afternoon from solar and wind. So it really is quite a big deal. 24%, roughly the same, comes from producing food through agriculture and land use. So that's going to come down to things like raising livestock, um, you know, tilling fields, irrigating fields, the whole everything that goes into producing, keeping us alive with the food that we eat. 21% comes from industry. So that's manufacturing things. And by the way, a lot of that is concrete. The manufacturing of concrete and the manufacturing of steel are two of the things that use a lot of electricity and therefore a lot of emissions. 14% transportation. So that includes our cars, that includes airplanes, it includes the elite billionaire private jets, all that stuff. It includes cruise ships, tanker container ships, all of that stuff, all included in transportation, trains, buildings. From what I can understand, they're talking about like big office buildings and things like that, and then 10% other, which can be just about anything. As far as, let's see, there were a couple other interesting things that I wanted to show you here. Oh, this breaks it down. This is the one that breaks down each of those things that I just mentioned to you. So like electricity production, electricity used in buildings, electricity used in industry. Within industry, it breaks it down. So like waste and waste management, like landfills and stuff like that, 3%. Chemicals, cement. See, I said concrete. So you make the cement, you mix it with an aggregate, and that's what we call concrete. Manufacturing metals. So that's what I mentioned about steel. So between cement and steel, cement and metals, that's 8% of all the greenhouse gases come from just those two things. But of course, that's what everything's made out of, right? I mean, if we build a road, you have rebar that's made out of steel and you have concrete. So that's the majority. 5% of the greenhouse gases in the world come from animals, which, you'll hear sometimes referred to as cow burps. And also related to things like fertilizers and manure. So I thought that was interesting. Well, I'll share that to you last because those are the most interesting ones that I thought. Where can we make improvements in our transportation emissions? So some of this can be done on an individual basis. Most of it, they say, has to be done on more of like a governmental institutional basis. I feel like you do. I don't love government control. I don't want Big Brother watching what I do. I get it. I get all that. These are some things that we could do that maybe aren't that painful, like electric cars and trains, and which I know a lot of you are going to say, well, hey, electric cars, the electricity has to come from somewhere. It does. But in an ideal world, you would get the electricity from wind power and solar power, and then that would be put into your electric car, and then it would be basically clean, aside from the manufacturing process of the electric car where you have to make batteries and I get that. But after a series of years, it would flip. If you had enough power coming from solar and nuclear and wind and all of that stuff, and you reduce the amount coming from natural gas and coal, it would turn the tides eventually. You can also do, if you don't want to do electric cars, hybrid cars or very high efficiency cars and trucks. So unfortunately, that is boring. It means cars that don't accelerate that fast unless you get that, my friend's Tesla. It means pickup trucks that are not going to be, as fast as we like them here in Texas. Efficient ocean shipping. That's something that I don't think you or I could really do anything about, right? What am I going to do about a ship? The biggest incentive there is if you make more efficient ships, they use less fuel. And then there are things like making cities more walkable so that people don't have to drive as much. High-speed rail. I've talked about that for years, like a Houston to Dallas to Austin or San Antonio kind of triangle of high-speed rail. I think that would be kind of cool. I don't know if it would help much, but it would be pretty cool. Public transit. Some cities it works, some cities it doesn't. I mean, if you go to New York City or something, public transit is everything. If you come to Houston, you know as well as I do, very few people use the light rail and the buses. It's just the truth. Very few people use that. So maybe that'll change. carpooling, things like that. So that's pretty easy stuff. Food and agriculture. Now, stay with me here. This organization, drawdown.org, they're when I look down here, I'm just looking at my time because I'm getting close to running out of time. Their biggest recommendation is to eat a plant-rich diet. So shifting away from beef is supposed to be one way to really, and look, I like a brisket as much as the next guy, but maybe if we reduced it a little bit, according to them, it might help. These are the top 20 things that we can do, sort of bang for the buck, to help with reducing greenhouse gases. Wind turbines, which we already have a bunch of, and solar farms, basically. So widespread wind power and widespread electrical power, and also things like reducing food waste, eating less meat. And there are a couple of things in here, preserving rainforests and things that I think we could all pretty much agree on. So anyway, there's a lot of information there. It's at drawdown.org if you want to check them out. If you don't want to do that, it's interesting just to Google stuff, on Earth Day. Doesn't need to be political, but it does, it's going to look, we're all going to find out at some point, right? I want to thank you all for joining me here for this Mondays with Mike. And shout out to my mom and my brother. And I know Neil's doing great. And I'm glad to be back here in H-Town and glad to be back on the air here at Fox 26. While I was in Florida, real quick, I did get a Roku for my mom and my brother, and I installed the Fox Local app so that they can watch, and they're watching right now. So you should do the same. Download the Fox Local Smart TV app on your smart TV platform. See you next time.